Hello, this is James and you're watching another episode of Let's Architecture. In today's video, I will show you how to create this site analysis diagram inspired by Alex Hogrefe. So without any further ado, let's architecture. You guys complained that I'm not explaining stuff enough, so in this video you have plenty of explanations. As you can see, this image consists of some greenery with fields and trees. It consists of this body of water, which is a canal in this case. These red lines, which represent pedestrian movement, and some buildings. And it also has some transport, as you can see, boats, trains and cars. And on the right you can see the individual diagrams showing specific characteristic of the site. So greenery, water, pedestrian movement and buildings. So now let's go and see how to make these. So in the beginning I modeled my terrain. To do this I used Rhino and I rendered it in Maxwell, if I'm correct. Since then I've moved to 3ds Max and Corona, but I'm pretty sure you can achieve this result in any render. So what you need is just your physical model and you just need to apply the most basic white material. I've actually exported two renders, one with the shadows and one without the shadows. You take your non-sun render and on top of it you put your sun render and you change the blending mode to overlay. So that's how I got this result. Then I overlaid it with the outline layer, which I got from modeling. I just simply did a print screen and I overlaid it. So if I turn it on and off, yeah, off, on, and here it is. You can see it's just a simple lines diagram. Then I added a hatch to my buildings and the river, well, the canal, technically speaking. Then I also added an outline to the canal, see? And to do this you get your brush tool and you just click on one corner, hold shift and then click the other corner, and it basically creates a line between your starting point and your ending point. And if you hold shift again and then click, you can just continue doing this. Yeah, so that's how I did it. Then I tried to differentiate between different surfaces. So I created a darker infill for the road. I basically created a shape and I filled it with black color, and I've just put it on linear burn so that these lines don't disappear. And I actually think it worked quite well. So without, with, quite good. Then I also added a bit of texture. As you can see, I've just got a, well, generic asphalt texture like this, and I've positioned it over the road. And then to apply this texture just to the road, what you have to do is you have to put it above your road shape. As you can see, it's just below, and if you hover between the layers you would see this icon with an arrow and the square. Once you get this icon you just click the left button and basically your texture is applied just to the shape that's below it, if you get what I mean. So then I did absolutely the same thing with the rails, texture and shape. I think it makes a big difference. White for the rail and black for the road, and they were meant to represent movement and energy in some sort of sense. These, and I will show you later how I created these, because it's actually pretty simple, but more on that a little bit later. So then I added the Google Earth overlay texture. If I were to put it to normal 100%, yeah, so I basically just went to Google Earth and print screened the texture, overlaid the existing site. And the reason for doing that is because without it, it looked a bit, well, plain and empty. And with it, you get some sort of hint of what's there. So it's not really in your face, but at least it gives you some sort of additional texture. So it's not as plain. And that was the basics of this sort of base image. And once all of this was done, I've realized that I needed to include this area as well. So I basically went back and added this area, and the process I used was exactly the same as I showed previously, before, after. And then I looked at this and I kind of realized that, you know, these lines, they do represent movement, but for me it wasn't enough. I actually wanted to include some real transport, so that's what I did. And suddenly you can see that the scene is actually came to life, you know, without and with. It actually made a huge difference in my opinion. I basically went back to my original file and I just basically placed some transport there, and I tried to match the original shadow direction, well, or you can say sans position, whatever you want. If I go back in, so let's focus on this car. There are 3 layers to each transport. You got the shadow layer, which is basically normal render put on lowered opacity and put on multiply, and then you have the same layer but without the shadow, so basically just erase the shadow and put it on normal 100%, and then is the outline. So exactly the same as I did with the actual base image, and that's what I did to all the transport. You can see it listed here. So this was my base image done. I've actually used this particular image in 2 pieces of work, and I will show you the other piece of work next week. So let's go back to the actual site analysis, and the first one is the pedestrian movement, and as you can see it's basically just red lines. This was meant to represent the main pedestrian traffic areas where people will walk the most, and yeah. So if we looked into it, so actually as you can see it's basically a lot of single lines. So if I want to switch it off, these more and more. And actually this is the same process I used to create these lines on the tracks, and I promised that I showed you. I'll show you. So first you need to create a brush. So this would determine the thickness of your lines. It could determine your color, but I will show you how to change that later. So what we're focusing on now is the thickness, because you won't be able to change it later. Well, that's too thick. Let's go to, oh, maybe 3. Yeah, 3 looks okay. So once you're happy with your brush size, select your pen tool, which is this, and start drawing your lines. So imagine I want to draw a line. I want to represent how people go through here. Okay, so once you're happy with your sort of path, you go to you right click, not left click, right click, and you click this stroke path. And on default you would have pencil selected, so change it to brush and make sure that your simulate pressure is turned off, on off. Or, well, actually there's two options. So I will show you first what's the pressure off. So once you click that, you click OK, and your path is drawn. So then you just click the delete button twice. That will erase the vector, and you have your line, and then you can just do with it whatever you want. But you can also, if I go back, if you have simulate pressure on, what it will do, I'll show you, it will fade your brush. Well, not really fade, it will both fade and sort of make the ends thin, so it will be more like a actual brush stroke. It depends if you want that effect or not. Sometimes it could be good. I don't actually want that, so let's draw a path. Okay, so now that you have the basics done, I'll show you just one more step, which is this reddish glow that you see. So if you double click your layer and then go to outer glow, which is here, and you just select your color, just basically play with these settings until you are happy with the result. Yeah, once you're happy, oh, and if you want to change the color of the actual line, you decided, well, I want it to be blue, for example, you can click the color overlay and you can change it to blue. Why not? And once you're happy, just click OK. So that's how I did these lines and these lines as well. So now we have movement done. Now I will show you the buildings. I just simply used created a shape and filled it with darker color, and that's it, and lowered the opacity a bit. So I simply created a shape, filled it with black color, put it on multiply and lowered the opacity, and then just duplicated the process, and also added some textures as well, and extra hatch lines. Really simple. The river or the canal, well, the first thing was to fill in the canal with blue color, blue shape, here, and I also added internal shadows. So if I click these off, you can see it's flat color, and then you got this sort of shadows in the edge, and I put it on multiply, so then I would see the background. Then I filled it with a different color, and then another color, and then I started adding these lines. So I've created them in exactly the same way as I did all the other lines, and then more lines and more lines and more lines and more lines with different opacities and different colors. So as you can see, the more lines you have, the better. It creates a better effect. And I also have this diagram as a reference. See? Simples. Actually, one great thing about having transport on a different layer is that I can actually take this group and put it underneath the transport, so my boats won't become blue. The last layer was the greenery, yeah, and it's the most effective in my opinion on this particular site. So if I go in again, fill in all the green areas with green color, putting it on multiply, then add in some textures. So if I go to normal, I basically just took these textures from Google, and if I'm correct, I did this thing like more than a year ago. This was a metal texture. It was like scratched metal, but if you can see it, once I put it over the green base, it's actually really good for making a field illusion, because these they kind of look like paths that people take. So again, another trick. You don't always have to use grass photos. Sometimes even something like metal can work really good. And again, 75% blending mode to luminosity. Then I also added some darker areas at the edge. And these are simply, basically I just took like a grunge brush and just dabbed it wherever I wanted. And the last layer was these trees. For some reason I don't have the individual tree and how I did it, but I can show you now. You go on Google, get your tree plan image, delete the background so it's just a tree, and you go to double click the tree and click drop shadow, and then in here select a different angle. So basically this indicates the sun, so it's kind of like if the sun is here, and you also change the distance like that, and by changing the size you get shadows more sharp or blurred. Something like this could work, yeah. And I would also go create another layer above it with the sort of darker, select a soft brush this time, change the opacity a bit, say 20, and the sun is going from here, so change the blending mode to overlay, yeah, works fine. Might even duplicate it. So it's just kind of more alive, and that's how you do that's how I did my trees, really. And also, if you get a tree that's kind of a bit different in tone to your grass and you actually want a bit more similar, then you can just go to image, adjustments, hue and saturation, and change the tone of your tree this way. Or there's a third way, you can just create another layer above it, select the sort of tone you want, fill that tree and change the layer to color, and it's basically in line with the tone of the rest of the image. Yeah, so that's how I did my greenery layer. I turned everything on, and kind of to tie everything together I just added some, not random, but these kind of, I don't even know, it's kind of like, it's basically like a cloud of soft color. Again, you don't have to do it, I did it. So I just took this image, lowered opacity, screen mode. Then I also changed the brightness and contrast. So if I click the layer, also, yeah, so 1769, I increased it a bit. To have this layer, you go to Windows, click Adjustments, and if you go to Brightness and Contrast, yeah, you can change it. And then I added another one, which is sort of this, with some warm areas and cold areas. And if you look, this actually matches the image very well because as you can see from the shadows, the sun is here and it's kind of shining in this direction, which is really good. And then I put everything together, and once I was happy with my sort of layout, I used this plugin which I showed before, which is called Google NIK collection. Yeah, and you have tons and tons of different effects that you can add to your image. I mean, it's just endless. And kind of once you're happy with your presets, you just click OK, and you can also actually add multiple layers. And that's what I did. So done this, then this. So kind of this was my final image. So I hope this helped you. If you have any questions, then write them down in the comment sections, or you can write me a message on Facebook and I will definitely reply to you within 24 hours. If you like this video, then please hit that like button. It will really help me, and share this with your friends. This was James. Until next time, let's architecture.